I think a major issue that's facing all growers is labor, and it's been especially challenging this year with COVID hitting us.
We're getting all kinds of new invasive insects that we haven't had before.
In a lot of locations in Washington, you have problems with nematodes, which are root-feeding microscopic worms.
This year we had a great growing season, had a few hot spots, some heat waves, and then everything broke loose in mid-August, and there's just been fire everywhere.
I think the biggest challenge that's hitting the small fruit industry is that it is a relatively small industry, and it's hard to leverage larger amounts of money for larger projects that cut across multiple states and have more large scope.
There's a strong need to collaborate and develop systems that allow our growers to, again, produce the high quality fruit we're known for, but to do it economically.
The Northwest Center is a partnership of researchers and stakeholders in the region. This can include researchers from Oregon State University, Washington State University, the University of Idaho, and also private researchers that are located within the Pacific Northwest. The primary mission of the Northwest Center is to continue to maintain the economic productivity of the small fruit industry in the Pacific Northwest. Here in Corvallis, at the USDA ARS Horticulture Crops Research Unit, we have facilities for 13 research programs that span from small fruits to nursery crops. Associated with these labs, we have approximately 16 greenhouses where we do research. We also have a can yard. Our unit has the capacity to do a wide range of research, from molecular biology to plant physiology, plant pathology, and entomology.
I think the Northwest Center is important to the region for a couple of reasons. One of which is that I think when you think regionally as opposed to thinking parochially, you go farther because you can have more collaboration and you think outside your own box.
Scientists at these institutions are co-PIs on a project. And that's a very different thing than it used to be, where we would see someone, say, working on crown gall and at OSU, but they're not talking to the person working on crown gall in Washington, who's not talking about the person in Idaho. They're all collaborating on these studies so that we are being very efficient with research dollars.
The stakeholders do have direct input into what we think are where the priority areas should lie. And then the researchers take that information and figure out where their professional expertise lies, and can they marry those two together to put a proposal together.
I think the biggest value is that you have industry connected with USDA, and you also have the university researchers. And so it's that, kind of hub that brings them all together. And for instance, this last year, the consortium, a committee of members of the Small Fruit Center went back to DC, and they were able to have Congress appropriate some money for a precision viticulture position in Prosser that will serve the Northwest.
Some of the research done in the Pacific Northwest focused on organic production and high bush blueberry systems has been really important in establishing the organic blueberry industry here in the Northwest. The Northwest Center for Small Fruits Research and the members of the board are really instrumental in going to Washington, D.C. and articulating the importance of our industry and the needs of our industry. And in the case of our unique production system, they were able to secure the funding for the breeding position focused on blueberries here in the Northwest so that we can continue to produce the quantity and the quality that we're well known for.
The center's impact has been really remarkable, and I think a lot of people wouldn't be aware of how impactful it is. An example of early research that had this tremendous impact was powdery mildew is really a problem here. Research scientists with ARS made these really cool little simple traps that were inexpensive to make, and then they would do PCR analysis to detect when powdery mildew was hitting the rods. And so we tried it. And what we learned over the first season and the next season was we were clearly starting our spray program way too early. It is a tool that I found to be incredibly valuable.
One of the projects that was funded several years ago was in strawberries, and we were looking at renovation or mowing off the leaves after harvest. And so it turns out that the timing of when you do that renovation is really important, and you can increase yield by about 20% by doing it at the right time. So we found through that project that doing that renovation 2 to 4 weeks after the last fruit harvest increased yield compared to doing it any earlier or any later. And that led to about $500,000 to $1 million increase in value to the growers each year.
In the past, we've done experiments on things like deficit irrigation in wine grapes, and that has actually changed the way people irrigate in this state. And it's become a much more of a precision irrigation management tool than we had in the past, and I think that's really affected quality as well as the quantity of the grapes.
So Dr. Marcus Keller from WSU and Bhaskar Bondada, who's another WSU scientist, they teamed together and found out, sure enough, that no, if you irrigate, drip irrigation, now sprinklers would be different, but drip irrigation is not plumping up. The water is not going to the fruit. It's being used by the vine. And basically proved that this belief, this long century-old belief, was in error.
So another thing that we were studying in the organic blueberries was looking at different mulching practices. So we wanted to look at either using a black weed mat, and what we found again over that 10-year period was that we were able to increase yield sometimes to up to 10% more using the weed mat, and we actually decreased our production cost by 75%.
The power of the Northwest Center for Small Fruit Research is that it addresses priorities across commodities in the region and across different research areas. So we have researchers in the area who are looking at plant genetics, pest management, plant production, plant physiology, winemaking, all different types of aspects that has a tremendous impact across the region from an economic perspective to solve some of these very regionally specific problems.
Currently, we have a large project on fruit rats called gray mold caused by Botrytis species, and we're looking at fungicide resistance amongst our isolates and determining which fungicides the pathogen is already resistant to and may be less effective in field conditions.
Most of my research has been focused up in northern Washington. We've identified a soil-borne disease complex in red raspberry. So we were able to show that red raspberry is affected by 3 main soil-borne pathogens, one being root lesion nematode, one being verticillium, and one being Phytophthora. And it's Phytophthora that causes the most of that damage to the plants. We found out that the industry standard fumigant treatment doesn't really control Phytophthora rubi very well, and we're finding Phytophthora rubi is much more active in the summer than was previously expected, so that helps growers figure out when to target disease control measures to get the best control.
I've been looking at organic nitrogen fertility in blueberry systems that are in eastern Washington. This is an extremely large and important area of organic blueberry production, up to 45% of our total national fresh volume shipments, and very unique soil and climatic conditions. Research on organic nitrogen fertility management, though, is lacking, and we are hoping to address optimal nitrogen fertilizer sources and rates for this unique but important industry.
So I was very interested in this work with the Northwest Center because it was clear that if we could really work on getting more funding and prove that this was money well spent, like there was a great return on investment, that we could get more serious money that would help these researchers get more work done.
It's very difficult to run research programs when the support waxes and wanes. So if we can maintain the strength that we have and go for even more, that'll really support the center.
I think we have a real unique opportunity to start to make people in the region understand more about the center and all the great research that's conducted as part of the center. Additionally, I think it's really important for us to demonstrate the economic impact of our research on small fruit commodities.
I think one of the most important things that the Northwest Center can do is just to make sure that we're in really good communication with all of the growers, even those that aren't providing input and feedback on the actual project proposal or funding process, but making sure that we're getting the results out from the projects and the experiments that we're doing, and making sure that those results get communicated as widely as possible so that the largest sector of our industry can benefit from that.
I think that's going to make a big difference in the next 2 years as the industry starts to just hear Small Fruit Center more often and actually see, wow, they supported this research. This was good stuff.